So picture this. It's August 2021. The whole world is just glued to their screens, watching these absolutely chaotic scenes unfolding at Kabul's airport. After 20 years, and trillions of dollars, the Taliban were back. It all seemed to happen in the blink of an eye, this total catastrophic collapse that left pretty much everyone asking the exact same question.
Seriously, how did it end like this? How did one of the most expensive, most ambitious nation-building projects in modern history just crumble in a matter of weeks? Well, to really get to the bottom of it, we have to look way beyond the last 20 years. We have to go much, much deeper into the story of the land itself.
You see, the story of what happened in 2021 really starts centuries ago. It's a story of foreign powers, one after another, completely underestimating the place they were walking into. For centuries, Afghanistan has earned this fearsome nickname, the graveyard of empires. And believe me, it earned it for a reason.
I mean, just look at it. The country is a natural fortress. You've got this absolutely punishing landscape of mountains, dominated by the Hindu Kush, and it's filled with these fiercely independent warrior tribes. That combination, well, it has consistently broken the will of anyone who tried to conquer it. Alexander the Great's legendary forces, the British Empire at the absolute height of its power, the mighty Soviet Red Army, they all came and they all failed to tame this land.
And look, the struggle wasn't just against outsiders. The 20th century in Afghanistan was just one long story of internal turmoil. You had these repeated, violent clashes between reformers trying to build a modern central state and a deeply traditional society that just pushed back against them at every single turn.
This timeline really just lays out the chaos perfectly. So in 1919, you have King Amanullah Khan trying to drag the country kicking and screaming into the 20th century. What happens? 10 years later, he's overthrown. Then, in 73, the entire monarchy gets wiped out in a coup. And just 5 years after that, boom, the communists take over in yet another bloody revolution. It's just this relentless, exhausting cycle of upheaval.
And this quote from Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, is so incredibly revealing. You see, King Amanullah Khan really looked up to Ataturk. He wanted to copy his reforms. But Ataturk himself told him, whoa, slow down, build your army first. But the king didn't listen. And when Ataturk heard that the king was forcing radical social changes, like making women unveil, his reaction was instant. He just said, oh no, the man is gone. He knew right then and there that the king had moved way too fast and had completely, fatally misread his own people.
So that communist coup in 1978? Well, that was the trigger for the next great foreign disaster. The Soviets, terrified that their new communist-friendly state was about to collapse, rolled the tanks in on Christmas Day 1979. They walked straight into their own Vietnam.
This right here perfectly captures why it was such a catastrophe for them. So you've got the Soviets, right? They bring in this massive conventional army that was designed to fight NATO on the open plains of Europe. But they weren't fighting on open plains. They were up against guerrilla fighters, the Mujahideen, who knew every single mountain pass, every cave, every secret trail. The Soviets' tanks were useless against hidden anti-tank mines, and their helicopters, they became sitting ducks for American-supplied Stinger missiles. It was a classic, brutal lesson in asymmetric warfare.
And the human cost, the human cost for the Soviets was just immense. The official number is nearly 15,000 soldiers killed in action. That's a devastating blow that sent shockwaves all across the Soviet Union. But that number, as terrible as it is, doesn't even begin to tell the whole story.
Now this is the number that really just blows your mind. Almost 500,000, nearly 500,000 Soviet soldiers needed medical treatment for diseases like typhoid and hepatitis. It just proves a critical point. The unforgiving Afghan environment itself was just as deadly an enemy as any of the fighters. So you'd think, after the Soviets finally pulled out in '89, there'd be peace, right? Wrong. The communist government they left behind collapsed, and the Mujahideen factions that had won immediately turned their guns on each other. The country was plunged into an incredibly brutal civil war. And it was out of that absolute chaos that a new, and frankly even more formidable group began to rise.
They called themselves the Taliban, and the name, it literally just means students. They were mostly young Pashtun men who came from religious schools or madrasas, and they saw themselves as these holy purifiers, sent to cleanse the nation from all the corruption and the infighting of the warlords.
So, how on earth did they take over so fast? Well, their game plan was frankly brutally simple. They rose up out of the total anarchy of the Civil War and just systematically crushed all the predatory local warlords. In their place, they imposed this ultra-strict, hard-line version of Islamic law. But here's the key. For a population that was just exhausted by years of war and chaos, they provided security. It was a violent, repressive order for sure, but it was order. And by 1996, they'd taken Kabul.
But the Taliban's first time in charge was cut short by an event we all remember, September 11, 2001. Their decision to shelter al-Qaeda brought the world's last remaining superpower right to their doorstep. And that kicked off the latest, the longest, and by far the most expensive chapter in Afghanistan's long, bloody history of foreign intervention.
This timeline of the American years, it really tells the whole story. You can see the pattern. A quick initial success in 2001 when the Taliban were kicked out, then a massive troop surge in 2009 that just didn't deliver that final knockout blow. The killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011 was a huge victory, sure, but the war just dragged on. And then you get to the final fateful steps, a direct deal with the enemy and a rapid total pullout.
Yeah, this right here was the moment everything really changed. In 2020, in Doha, the United States signed a deal directly with the Taliban. They completely bypassed the Afghan government, the same government they had spent 2 decades and billions upon billions of dollars trying to build. I mean, the political signal that sent was massive. The US was basically saying, you know what, our nation-building project has failed, and you guys, the Taliban, you're the only ones we can actually negotiate an exit with.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Back to that original question. How did it all end like this? Well, the answer isn't just about the Taliban's strengths, it's about the deep, profound weaknesses of the state that was built to replace them.
At the end of the day, the government the West backed was just hollow. Corruption was absolutely rampant, it was systemic, stealing money and resources meant for the army and for the people. It empowered the exact same kind of abusive warlords the Taliban had gotten rid of in the 90s, which completely alienated people in the countryside. And most importantly, it just couldn't provide basic security. For so many Afghans, it was just seen as an illegitimate puppet regime, propped up entirely by foreign soldiers. And really, that's the core of it. That's the ultimate answer. Every single foreign power, from the British to the Soviets to the Americans, was fundamentally an outsider. They never truly understood the country, its complex tribal loyalties, or its deep, deep resistance to being controlled from the center. The Taliban, for all their brutality and their fanaticism, are an indigenous force. They're a product of Afghanistan's history, its culture, and its chaos. They won because in the end they were insiders in a land that has always, always rejected outsiders.
So the Taliban's victory closes one incredibly bloody chapter. But it just opens another, deeply uncertain one. And it leaves us all with one final, very sobering question to think about. After more than 40 years of non-stop war, what is peace? What is stability? What does the future even look like for the people of Afghanistan?